Let me tell you something I've learned the hard way in life. It's not just your talent. It's not just your hustle. It's what you choose to control. You've got to control your mouth, because the wrong words at the wrong time can cost you more than you can imagine. You've got to control your mood, because a bad attitude can destroy a good opportunity. You've got to control your money, because if you don't respect it, it won't respect you. And you've got to control your mind, because that's the battlefield where victories are won or lost before you even step out the door. I'm not telling you this from a book. I'm telling you from my own scars and my own blessings. I've lived it, and I'm still living it. When I was a young man starting out, I didn't understand the full weight of my words. I thought speaking was just about letting whatever was in my head roll off my tongue. But I learned very quickly that your words can open doors or slam them shut in your face. I remember my first audition for a major role. I walked in confident, ready to prove myself. But the producer asked me a simple question about the character, and instead of focusing on the role, I made a sarcastic remark. I thought I was being witty. What I didn't realize was that the person sitting across from me was listening not just to my answer, but to my attitude. That role slipped away from me. It wasn't because I didn't have the talent. It was because my mouth moved faster than my wisdom. That day taught me something that would stay with me. My whole life words are seeds, and they will grow into something. The question is, what are you planting? Over the years, I've seen people talk themselves out of opportunities, talk themselves into trouble, and talk themselves into living beneath their potential. I've also seen people speak life into themselves and others, creating atmospheres where growth is possible. I decided early on that I would choose my words like I choose my friends, with care, with intention, with awareness. There were times in Hollywood when people tried to provoke me, to pull me into an argument or get a reaction. They wanted me to say something that could be twisted, used against me, or define me in a way that wasn't true. But I learned to pause, breathe, and think before I spoke. Silence has never gotten me into trouble, but a careless word has. I'm not saying I got it perfect every time. I've made mistakes. There have been moments in my life where I said something in anger, and the echo of those words lingered longer than the moment that caused them. Once word out, you can't pull them back. You can apologize, yes, but the damage may still remain. That's why I began to treat my words like currency. You wouldn't just throw your money around without thinking, so why throw your words around carelessly? Words can build credit with people or put you in debt with them. The value of your word is tied to your integrity, and when people you mean what you say, and you say what you mean, doors start to open, not because you're lucky, but because you're trustworthy. I've found that the way you speak to yourself is just as important as the way you speak to others. When I was still finding my place in this world, I battled with self-doubt. I'd look at other actors, other successes, and wonder if I had what it takes. But the moment I started telling myself, yes, you can, the moment I started affirming my vision out loud, things shifted. Speaking faith over my life became a habit. I told myself I belonged in the room before I even stepped into it. And once you convince yourself, the world starts to believe it too. Your tongue can be your worst enemy or your greatest ally. It depends on how you use it. One of the greatest lessons my mother ever taught me was, be careful how you speak when you're angry. Because tomorrow you won't feel the same, but your words will still be out there. That stuck with me. I've learned that controlling your mouth isn't about weakness. It's about strength. Anyone can explode, but it takes a strong man to hold his peace, to choose patience over pettiness, to speak life when others expect you to spit fire. In this industry and in life, people remember what you say more than they were what you wear, what you drove, or even what you did. Words have weight, and if you don't control them, they'll control you. Looking back, every major breakthrough in my life was connected to a conversation, a moment where my words positioned me for what came next. And every setback I've had to endure was in some way tied to something said, either by me or about me. So now, before I speak, I ask myself, will this build? Will this inspire? Will this reflect the man I want to be? If the answer is no, I stay silent. Because at the end of the day, the world will judge you by your actions, yes, but it will remember you by your words. And if you can control your mouth, you can control a lot more than you think. When I look back at my journey, one thing I realize is that my mood could have been the reason I lost a lot of opportunities, but I refused to let it. You see, life is not fair. People will misunderstand you. They will talk about you. They will test you. And if you react to emotion, every time someone pushes your buttons, you'll spend your whole life defending yourself instead of building yourself. I learned early on that the mood you carry into a room speaks before you do. There were times in my career when I had every reason to be upset. Auditions I thought I nailed, only to hear, we went in another direction. Projects I poured my heart into that got cut short. And on top of that, life outside the cameras had its own storms. Family challenges, personal losses, moments when the weight felt too heavy. But here's the truth. Nobody hires you for your excuses. They hire you for your excellence. And excellence doesn't come from a place of chaos. There was a time when I was younger, sitting in a casting office, waiting my turn. I had just gotten bad news. My rent was late, my car was giving me trouble, and someone close to me had let me down. I was angry, frustrated, distracted. I wanted to vent, to let everyone know what I was going through. But I realized if I carried the mood into that room, I wouldn't just lose the role, I'd lose the respect. So I sat there, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. I reminded myself that the people on the other side of that door didn't owe me sympathy. They were looking for someone who could deliver, no matter what. That day, I chose to leave my mood at the door. I walked in, gave my best, and walked out with the role. And from that moment on, I understood your mood is not just about how you feel, it's about what you choose to project. Controlling your mood is not pretending you don't feel pain. I've felt pain. I've felt betrayal. I've felt anger so strong it could choke my words. But I learned to master the art of the pause. Before I speak, before I act, before I send that text or make that call, I stop and ask myself, is this the mood I want to carry into my future? Because moods are contagious. Walk into a room with frustration and you infect the atmosphere. Walk in with focus, gratitude, and purpose, and you shift the atmosphere. People can feel it. They may not remember every word you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. In Hollywood, I've seen incredibly talented people sabotage their own careers because they couldn't control their emotions. One argument, one angry outburst, one disrespectful comment, and doors closed that might never open again. I made a promise to myself, I will not let a temporary feeling create a permanent consequence. And that doesn't just apply to work, it applies to life. At home, with my family, with my friends, with strangers on the street. If someone cuts me off in traffic, I don't have to chase them down. If a journalist asks a question in a way I don't like, I don't have to snap back. If a deal falls through, I don't have to curse the people who made that decision. I've learned to take a step back, breathe and respond, not react. Sometimes, controlling your mood means walking away to protect your peace. Sometimes it means speaking softly when you want to shout. Sometimes it means smiling even when you're disappointed, not because you're faking it, but because you refuse to let negativity take the wheel. The strongest person in the room is not the one who can hit the hardest. It's the one who can hold back when they have every reason to swing. I've had moments where I walked away from heated situations and later thank God I did. Because when the storm passes, you can look back and be proud that you didn't let a single moment define your character. Control is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's knowing that the energy you bring into your day will shape the results you get. And the truth is, the world doesn't care about the storm you're in. It cares about the light. You can still shine while you're in it. So I keep my mood in check. Not because every day is perfect, but because I know my attitude is my responsibility. I choose to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. A thermometer just reacts to the temperature of the room. A thermostat sets the temperature, and no matter what's happening around me, I choose to set it on faith, on focus, and on purpose. Because at the end of the day, my mood will determine my moves, and my moves will determine my future. When I was a young man starting out, I thought money was just about numbers on a check. I thought the more I made, the more I could spend, and that somehow spending would prove I had made it. But life has a way of teaching you didn't ask for. Early on, when I started getting those first big paydays, I was excited. I wanted to take care of my family. I wanted to give. And yes, I wanted to enjoy the fruits of my labor. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I also learned that if you don't put a purpose to your money will put a purpose to you. I saw people around me, talented, hardworking, gifted, making more money in a year than some make in a lifetime, and yet they were broke before the next paycheck came in. Why? Because they never controlled it. They let it control them. The car, the house, the jewelry, it became a cycle, always needing the next thing to feel like they were winning. And the truth is, if you need things to feel like you're winning, you're already losing. I knew I couldn't live like that. I grew up watching my parents work hard, stretch every dollar, make decisions not based on what looked good, but on what was smart. My mother used to say, "Son, it's not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep and how you use what you keep." That stuck with me. In the business I'm in, there's no guarantee of tomorrow. One year you're in every script, every meeting, every magazine cover. The next year, the phone could go silent. So I decided early on that I would treat my money like a partner in my future, not just a ticket to the present. That meant saying no to things I wanted in the moment. That meant investing, saving, making sure I had something set aside for the day when the camera stopped rolling. It also meant giving, because if money doesn't pass through your hands to bless somebody else, it will pass right through your hands to nothing. I believe when you give, you make room to receive. I don't give because I expect something back. I give because I know the blessings I have weren't meant to stop with me. There were moments when friends would call me cheap because I didn't jump on every trend, didn't buy the most expensive car the day I could afford it. But I wasn't living to impress. I was living to last. And lasting requires discipline. You can't let money make you impulsive. You can't let it make you arrogant. And you can't let it make you forget where you came from. I've seen people lose it all, not because they weren't talented, but because they didn't respect what they had when they had it. Money is a tool. And like any tool, if you know how to use it, it can build something strong. But if you don't, it can tear your life apart. I've used money to buy freedom, not the freedom to waste, but the freedom to choose. The freedom to walk away from roles that didn't fit my values. The freedom to take time off and be with my family. the freedom to help someone else chase their dream. That's what control gives you, choice. But control doesn't happen by accident. It's not about how much you wish you could save. It's about making the decision before the money even hits your hands. Every dollar has to have a name. Every paycheck has to have a purpose. If you don't tell your money where to go, it will find its own way, and it usually walks right out of your life. I've learned that you can measure success in a lot of ways. Awards, recognition, applause. But one of the truest measures is how you handle what you've been given. And that doesn't just mean talent or opportunity. It means your resources, your relationships, your responsibilities. Money will test your character. It will reveal whether you run it or it runs you. So when I say control your money, I'm not talking about being afraid to spend. I'm talking about being wise enough to know when, where, and why you're spending. I'm talking about building a future that doesn't just depend on the next job, the next gig, the next lucky break. I'm talking about creating something that will outlive the applause. I'm talking about making sure your money serves you, your family, and your purpose, not the other way around. Because when you control your money, you control a piece of your destiny. And that's a kind of wealth no price tag can match. When I talk about controlling your mind, I'm not speaking from theory. I'm speaking from a lifetime of having to guard that space like it's the most valuable real estate I own, because it is. Your mind is the gatekeeper to your future. It's the command center for everything you do. And if you leave it open to anything and everything, you'll end up living by somebody else's design. When I was starting out, I didn't have all the opportunities in the world just laid out in front of me. I had a lot of no's before I had any yes. And if I had let every rejection, every opinion, every piece of criticism just settle in my head, I wouldn't be standing here today. You've got to understand, your mind is like a garden. If you don't plant what you want to grow, weeds are going to show up on their own. And the world is full of weeds, negativity, doubt, fear, gossip, envy, things that will choke out your vision if you don't pull them up and replace it with faith, with purpose. In this business, in Hollywood, you see a lot of people lose themselves. They start out knowing who they are, but over time they start listening to the wrong voices, chasing the wrong approval, trying to live up to an image that doesn't even belong to them. I promised myself early on that I wouldn't let the industry get inside my head in that way. I had to make sure I fed my mind with the right things. Books that challenged me, conversations with people who inspired me, time in prayer, time in reflection. I had to keep my mind sharp, but more than that, I had to keep it clean. There's a lot of noise out there. People will tell you what you can't do, what you shouldn't try, who you're not good enough to be. If you're not careful, you start to believe them. And once you believe them, you start living small, playing it safe, holding yourself back. That's why I guard my mind. I don't just let anything stay up there rent-free. You've got to be the landlord of your own thoughts. If something doesn't serve you, if it doesn't build you up, if it doesn't align with your values, it has to go. It's like this. When I'm preparing for a role, I'm careful about what I watch, what I listen to, who I talk to, because everything's going to shape my performance. Well, life works the same way. What you put in shapes what comes out. I've also learned that your mind is where fear tries to set up camp. Before you ever face a challenge, before you ever take a risk, fear shows up in your thoughts, telling you you're not worthy, you're going to fail. But here's the thing, fear is a liar, and it only has power if you feed it. You feed it by giving it your attention, by replaying those thoughts over and over. Instead, you've got to starve it. You've got to feed your faith instead. Feed your focus. That's how you take control. People think self-control is just about what you do, but it starts way before action. It starts with your thoughts. You can't act right if you think wrong. You can't have peace if your mind is chaos. I've seen people with all the talent in the world lose everything because they couldn't control their mind. They let their ego run wild or their insecurity drive their decisions. I didn't want that to be me, so I made it a discipline to reset my mind daily, sometimes hourly, because life will throw things at you all day long, trying to pull you off track. Controlling your mind doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you choose how you respond to it. It means when things don't go your way, you don't spiral, you adapt. When people come at you sideways, you don't react, you stay centered. It means you think long term when everything around you is screaming for short term satisfaction. Every great thing I've done in my life, every milestone I've reached, it started here before I ever stepped on a stage, before I ever walked on a set. The battle was won in my mind first. And I believe that's true for you too. If you can learn to control your mind, you can control your life. That's not something I just say to sound good. It's something I live every single day. Because I know if I lose control up here, I lose control out there. And that's a price I'm not willing to pay. Discipline has been the quiet force in my life that has shaped everything you see today. People look at the movies, the awards, the speeches, but they don't see the hours of saying no, when it would have been easier to say. They don't see the times I wanted to react in anger, but chose to walk away. The times I wanted to spend money to impress, but instead invested it in something that would last. The moments I wanted to quit, but decided to keep showing up. Discipline connects the mouth, the mood, the money, and the mind, because if one is out of control, the others will eventually follow. I learned this early, watching people in my neighborhood who had talent, but lacked self-control. They'd let their mouth run wild and ruin relationships. They'd let their emotions get the best of them and burn bridges they couldn't rebuild. They'd get money and lose it just as quickly because they couldn't manage it. And they'd fill their mind with the wrong voices until they didn't believe in themselves anymore. I told myself, that's not going to be me. When I first came to Hollywood, it was a test every single day. You're surrounded by opportunity, but you're also surrounded by traps. Someone's always ready to provoke you, flatter you, tempt you, or distract you. Without discipline, you get pulled in 100 directions and never reach the one you're meant to walk. I had to discipline my mouth, learning to speak with respect even when I was frustrated, to keep certain thoughts to myself, to choose silence over gossip, because I understood that my reputation was being built every time I opened my mouth. I had to discipline my mood, learning to show up on set with the same professionalism, whether I was dealing with personal struggles or not, because nobody pays for your excuses, they pay for your results. I had to discipline my money, remembering that a big paycheck doesn't mean you spend big. It means you use it to create stability for the future. And I had to discipline my mind, feeding it with scripture, wisdom, and positive voices so that when challenges came, I had the mental strength to push through. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's not the part that gets applause. Nobody cheers when you go home early instead of partying all night, or when you pass on a roll, because it doesn't align with your values, or when you refuse to answer an insult with an insult. But those are the choices that build a career that lasts decades, not years. It's like building a house. Every decision is a brick. If your mouth is careless, that's a cracked brick. If your mood swings without control, That's a weak brick. If your money slips through your fingers, that's a missing brick. If your mind is unguarded, that's a rotten brick. And when the storm comes, and it will come, those flaws will show. Discipline makes sure the bricks are strong, straight, and ready to hold up under pressure. I've learned that you can't separate these things. If you let your mind get polluted, your words will eventually reflect it. If you let your emotions run wild, you'll start making poor financial choices. If you waste your money, you'll start feeling frustrated and negative, which will come out in your mood and your words. Everything is connected. That's why discipline is the thread that ties them together. You can't just control one area and ignore the others. You have to commit to controlling all four because they all feed each other. And discipline isn't something you master once. It's something you practice every day. Some days I win, some days I learn, but I keep showing up for the fight. I think that's the real secret. Don't just wait for discipline to appear when life gets tough. Build it in the small, boring moments. Practice it when nobody's watching. Keep your mouth in check during casual conversations. Control your mood in traffic. Manage your money on the small purchases. Guard your mind when you're scrolling through your phone. Those little acts of discipline are like daily workouts for your character. And when the big test comes, when someone disrespects you, when you face a financial setback, when doubt creeps into your mind, you'll already be strong enough to stand. I'm standing here today, not because I had more talent than everyone else, but because I was willing to control myself when the world around me was out of control. That's the truth. Discipline doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. And when you are stronger, the storms don't break you. They reveal that you've been building something that can't be shaken